The first reports came in with static and broken voices. Outpost after outpost was falling on the rim worlds. The enemy was fast, ruthless, and unlike anything the Galactic Alliance had faced. They did not send diplomats or warnings. They came. In dark ships with hulls that swallowed light and weapons that cut through shields like paper. The war began before anyone could even call it a war. On the third day, the Alliance sent a fleet to stop them. The fleet never returned. Only fragments of their transmissions made it back. Screams, orders shouted in panic, and then silence. In the council chambers, fear grew heavier. Many worlds spoke of surrender before the enemy even reached them. It was then that the old name resurfaced in whispers. The Verith. An ancient warrior race thought extinct. It was said that their leaders were not chosen by power, but by how many had feared them. Among the Verith was one they called the Beast. Her name was whispered as Zarina. She was said to be a commander who had never known defeat. Her skin was marked with deep scars from countless battles, her horns black as obsidian, and her eyes like cold fire. Entire battalions fled at the sight of her banners. Some claimed she fought for no cause, only for the thrill of breaking those who stood before her. The first time the Alliance saw her was on the burning world of Caries 4. Human Marines had been deployed to evacuate civilians when her flagship descended. The sky turned crimson from the light of its engines. Zarina walked through smoke and flame as if it were a calm meadow. Her armor gleamed with strange patterns, every step echoing with the sound of victory drums from her troops. The humans had heard of her, but had never faced her. They soon learned that all the stories were true. Captain Elias Ward was leading the evacuation. He had fought in the outer rim sieges and survived battles where even hope had been lost. But nothing had prepared him for seeing her in person. She was taller than most men, her presence heavy like a storm pressing down on his chest. Around her, the Verith warriors moved like a single living machine. Yet it was her eyes that caught him, eyes that seemed to see past armor, past weapons. Past every defense a soldier could raise, she saw him too. Through the chaos, through the noise of war, her gaze found his. It was not hatred that burned there, but something sharper. Interest, curiosity. She had fought countless species, broken countless wills, yet this one human stood in her path without flinching. He barked orders, pulled civilians to safety, and fired his weapon until the barrel steamed. She advanced toward him, her warriors holding back as if knowing this moment was hers alone. When they finally stood face to face, the air seemed to still. Her shadow fell over him, her armor close enough to reflect his scarred face. For a long moment, neither moved. Around them, the battle continued, but here in this space between them, it was silent. Then she spoke in a voice deep and edged with command. "You are not afraid." Her words were not a question but a statement, as if she were measuring the weight of his soul. Elias met her gaze. "Fear wastes time," he said simply. Her lips curved slightly, not in kindness but in recognition. She reached out, her gaunted hand brushing against the scar running from his jaw to his cheek. The gesture should have been a threat, but instead it felt like something else entirely. As if she was reading a language written in the lines of his skin. For the first time in the battle, she did not strike. For the first time she hesitated. The smoke on Caries 4 clung to the air long after the last shots were fired. Elias stood among the ruins, his armor scorched, his rifle empty. Around him, human survivors moved in silence, gathering the wounded and counting the dead. The Verith had withdrawn without a final strike, leaving behind a battlefield that felt unfinished. It was unlike them to leave prey alive, and the reason was standing in his memory with horns, scars, and eyes that refused to fade. Zarina had not come to finish the fight. She had come to see him. That thought stayed with him as he worked through the night, organizing the survivors and securing the landing zone for evacuation. The whispers spread quickly among the soldiers. They spoke of the beast sparing a human captain, of her turning away when victory was hers. Some believed it was a trick, that she had planted fear to break them later. Others thought it was a challenge, a mark for him to carry into the next battle. In the command tent, Elias reviewed the damage reports. His mind should have been on tactics, on the next move, on how to hold the next colony in the enemy's path. But each time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. It was not beauty in the way humans described beauty. It was the kind that came with danger, with the weight of history, with the certainty that she had walked through 1,000 deaths and still stood unshaken. And yet, when she touched his scar, her hand had not been cruel. The War Council sent new orders by dawn. The humans were to regroup at Arden Station, a fortress in orbit above a mineral world. It was a place meant to be unbreakable, armed with heavy rail cannons and shield grids that could hold against fleets. Elias knew that if the Verith came, the station would be tested in ways its designers never imagined. He also knew she would come not just as an enemy commander, but for something more personal. When they arrived at Arden Station, preparations began immediately. Marines drilled in the corridors, engineers reinforced bulkheads, and ships patrolled the outer sectors. Still, in every shadow, in every silent corner of the station, the soldiers talked about her. Some called her a monster. Others called her a warrior worthy of respect. Elias called her neither, though the word that lingered in his mind felt closer to human than he expected. The attack came 3 days later. Verith warships dropped out of hyperspace, their black hulls blotting out the stars. The first salvo shook the station, and alarms screamed through every deck. Elias took command of the defense forces on the eastern sector. As the battle raged, one of the massive enemy ships moved closer than the rest. Its weapons targeted everything except the command deck where Elias stood. He knew without being told who was aboard. Zarina entered the station not through a breach in the hull, but through the main docking bay. The Verith warriors with her cut through human defenses with precision, but none struck the final blow. When Elias stepped into the bay, he found her waiting, her soldiers forming a wall behind her. She removed her helmet, letting her hair fall over her armored shoulders. The scars on her face caught the light, and her gaze locked on his as if no one else existed in the room. "You fight as if your death would mean nothing," she said, her voice carrying over the clash of battle elsewhere. Elias lowered his weapon, but did not drop it. "I fight because my life means something," he replied. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in study. Then she stepped closer, close enough for him to see the faint lines of old wounds across her armor. "They call me a beast," she said, her tone almost questioning. He did not hesitate in his answer. "They are wrong," he said. And for the first time since the war began, she smiled. The battle for Arden Station dragged into its second day. Human forces fought with precision, holding the Verith at bay in most sectors. Yet the strange pattern of the attack became clear. Zarina's warriors struck hard where Elias was stationed, then pulled back without pressing their advantage. It was as if the rest of the war was only a shadow to the moment she could speak to him again. Elias kept his focus on the fight, but his mind carried the weight of their last words. She had smiled, not with mockery, but with something unfamiliar. The soldiers who witnessed it whispered in the halls, confused by the idea that the beast could show anything close to warmth. They had expected her to break him, not acknowledge him. Now those whispers were shaping into questions that no one wanted to ask aloud. In the quiet hours between assaults, Elias studied the tactical maps. The Verith fleet was stronger than what the Alliance had seen before, but their moves were deliberate and slow. It was a siege without urgency. He began to suspect the warship she commanded could have ended the station's defenses in hours, yet it had not. This was not about destroying Arden Station. This was about her and him, and the strange path that had crossed between them. On the third night, an unexpected breach cut through the lower maintenance levels. Elias led a squad down to secure the area. The corridors were dim, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. The sound of boots echoed through the steel walls. When they reached the breach, they found no enemy soldiers waiting in formation. Instead, a single figure stood in the center, unarmed but wearing battle armor marked with the crest of the Vareth. Zarina had come alone. His soldiers raised their weapons instantly, but Elias signaled them to hold. The look in her eyes was the same as on Carrie's 4, steady and unshaken. She removed her helmet, setting it on the deck with slow care. "Your people call me a beast," she said. "Do you believe them?" Her voice was low, but it carried through the silence like a blade. Elias took a step forward. "No," he answered. She studied his face for a long moment, before speaking again. "Why?" she asked, her head tilting slightly as if testing him. He thought about her question before answering. "A beast destroys without thought. You have thought in every move you've made," he said. "You choose where to strike, and you chose not to strike me when you could have." Her eyes narrowed as if searching for falsehood. Instead, she found something else in his words. Slowly, she stepped closer until the metal of her armor brushed against his. "You speak as if you know me," she said. "I want to," he replied without hesitation. The sound of approaching boots broke the stillness. More human soldiers were coming, alerted by the breach alarms. She glanced toward the sound, then back to him. "They will not understand," she sighed. Elias did not answer. She turned sharply, retrieving her helmet, and moved toward the breach. Before stepping through, she looked back over her shoulder. "Next time we meet, you will see why they fear me," she said. Then she was gone into the darkness beyond the hull. When the reinforcements arrived, they found only Elias standing at the breach, weapon lowered. His men exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. In the debrief later, he gave no explanation for why the most feared commander in the Vareth fleet had walked into their station and left without a fight. The officers pressed him for answers, but he offered only the truth that they would not believe. She had not come to win the battle. She had come to see him, **. The days after her departure were tense. The Vareth fleet remained in orbit, their presence like a shadow over the station. They struck in small bursts, testing the defenses, but never committing to a full-scale assault. Elias felt the pattern in every skirmish. This was not a war, meant to be won quickly. This was a game with a purpose only she understood. Rumors spread through the station like wildfire. Some claimed Elias had fought her and survived by skill alone. Others whispered that he had made some kind of bargain with her. None of them knew the truth. The soldiers avoided asking him directly, but their eyes carried questions every time. He passed by. He said nothing because there were no words that would make them believe what really happened. Late one evening, Elias stood alone on the observation deck. The void stretched endlessly before him, stars shimmering against the black. In the distance, the Vareth flagship moved slowly, a predator that knew its prey could not escape. He watched it for hours, as if his gaze could reach her across the gulf of space. Somewhere in that vessel, she was watching too. He could feel it like a weight pressing against his thoughts. The next attack came without warning. A wave of fighters broke through the outer defenses, and alarms filled the station. Elias led his squad to intercept, cutting off the enemy before they could reach the core sectors. In the chaos of battle, he saw her warship break formation and move closer to the docking bays. His heart tightened. She was coming again, and this time, she would not come alone. When the bay doors opened, a squad of Vareth soldiers poured in, moving with deadly precision. Behind them, Zarina entered in full armor, her eyes scanning the room until they found him. The fighting around them slowed as her warriors formed a perimeter. She removed her helmet and stepped forward. "You stand against me again," she said. Elias raised his weapon but kept his aim low. "You keep giving me reasons to," he replied, Her gaze lingered on him, studying his stance. "Do you fear me yet?" she asked. "No," he answered. "Fear is for those who do not understand what they face." Her lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. "And you think you understand me," she said. "Not yet," he admitted. "But I will." The soldiers on both sides shifted uneasily, sensing something they could not explain in the exchange between them. Without warning, she stepped closer, so close that the glow of her eyes lit the scars on his face. "You carry your wounds like banners," she said. "Do they make you proud?" He met her gaze without flinching. "They remind me of what I've survived," he replied. For a moment, her expression softened. Then the sound of approaching reinforcements broke the moment, and she stepped back. "This place will not hold forever," she said before turning away. Her soldiers withdrew in perfect formation, covering her as they retreated to their ship. The bay was left in silence except for the breathing of the humans who had witnessed the encounter. No one spoke. Elias lowered his weapon slowly, his mind replaying her words. She had not come to destroy the station. She had come to measure him again, as if each meeting was another piece of a puzzle only she could see. The battle quieted after her last visit, but the silence was heavy. The Varith fleet stayed close, like wolves circling prey that could not run. Every crew member felt the tension. Even when alarms stayed silent, the air carried the weight of waiting. Elias knew was not over. She was not done. His officers urged a counterattack. They wanted to push the enemy back before they could regroup. Elias refused. He knew a reckless move would give her exactly what she wanted. She was not seeking a quick defeat for the humans. She was testing them. She was testing him. Every decision he made seemed like a move on a board only she could see. In the mess hall, the soldiers still spoke of her in low voices. Some told stories of her battles on other worlds, tales of her crushing armored lines with her personal guard. Others doubted she was even real, claiming she was a myth used to scare enemies. Elias listened without correcting them. He could still feel the weight of her gaze from their last meeting, and it was a truth too strange for them to believe. One night, the station's sensors detected a single incoming craft. No escorts, no warships. Just one small vessel moving at controlled speed toward the docking bay. The identification codes were unknown. Alarms rang, but Elias ordered them silenced. He knew before the ship landed who would be. When the ramp lowered, Zarina walked down alone, her armor gleaming under the bay lights. This time she carried no weapon. Her helmet was under one arm, and her steps were slow, deliberate. The human soldiers nearby raised their rifles, but she ignored them. Her focus was locked on Elias from the moment she appeared. He stepped forward, stopping just a few paces from her. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because I choose to be," she replied. They stood in the middle of the bay, surrounded by tense soldiers from both sides. "You keep risking yourself coming here," he said. "Why?" She tilted her head, studying him. "Because no one else has spoken to me the way you have," she answered. "No one has looked at me without seeing the beast." The word struck him harder than he expected. "Then they have not looked closely enough," he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in thought. "Your kind sees beauty differently," she said. "Among my people, scars and horns are marks of strength. Among yours, they are marks to be hidden." He shook his head. "Not for me," he said. "Strength is beauty. And I see strength when I look at you." Her gaze softened, though her stance stayed firm. "Then you see what others cannot," she said. The moment was broken by the sound of Varith ships moving into attack positions outside the station. Alarms began to blare again. Zarina's expression shifted, and she took a step back. "This is not the day for the truth," she said. She turned toward her vessel, but paused before boarding. "When it comes you will know," she added. Then she left as suddenly as she had arrived, her ship pulling away into the dark. Elias stood in the empty bay long after she was gone. The soldiers around him looked unsettled, unsure whether they had witnessed a threat or something else entirely. For Elias there was no doubt. The war was no longer about territory or victory. It had become something personal. And in that space between battles, he understood that the most dangerous part was not her strength. It was the way she made him see her differently from anyone else. The next few days felt like the calm before a storm. The Varith fleet held its distance, but the tension inside the station only grew. Every soldier knew it could change in a heartbeat. Elias spent his time moving between sectors, checking defenses, speaking with officers, and making sure morale held. But beneath all of that, his thoughts always drifted to her. It was strange to think that in the middle of a war, the most dangerous enemy commander had become the person he thought about the most. Her presence had unsettled him in a way no battlefield ever had. She was fierce, relentless, and feared by many. Yet she had spoken to him not as a beast, but as someone who wanted to be seen. That truth clung to him as much as the memory of her eyes. The next message from the Alliance command changed everything. A massive fleet was finally on its way to break the siege. It would arrive within 3 days. To the soldiers, this was the hope they had been waiting for. To Elias, it meant something else. It meant that when the fleet came, she would either be forced to retreat or be destroyed. He realized that if they met again, it could be for the last time. That night, the sensors detected movement. One ship detached from the Varith fleet and moved toward the station. It came in fast but without weapons active. Elias was already on the way to the docking bay before the alarms finished sounding. He knew exactly who it would be. When the ramp lowered, Zarina stepped out, her armor bearing fresh damage as if she had come from another battle. She walked straight to him, ignoring the soldiers who kept their rifles ready. "I have little time," she said. "Your fleet will arrive soon." He nodded. "You knew they were coming." She stepped closer, her voice lower. "I knew. That is why I am here now." He studied her face, reading the tension in her eyes. This was not the confident arrival of their past meetings. This was something heavier. "I have fought for my people all my life," she said. "I have been the weapon they needed and the shield they demanded. But you have made me question what I am beyond that." Elias felt his chest tighten at her words. "And what do you think you are?" he asked. She held his gaze for a long moment. "I think I am more than the beast they see," she said. For the first time, he stepped closer to her. "You are more," he said firmly. Her eyes softened, though her stance stayed strong. "Then tell me this," she said. "When the battle comes, will you see me as your enemy?" He shook his head slowly. "I will see you as you are. And I will fight the battle, but I will not fight you." Her lips curved slightly, but it was not victory she showed. It was something close to relief. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment. Her warriors appeared at the ramp, their body language tense. "They know I am here," she said. "I must leave." She turned to go, but paused and looked back at him. "When we meet again, you may have to choose," she said, "between your orders and what you truly believe." Without waiting for an answer, she boarded her ship, and the ramp closed. Elias stood in the docking bay long after the engines faded. The words she had left him with burned in his mind. The siege was about to end, but something deeper had begun. And he knew that whatever choice she spoke of, it would not be one the Alliance could understand. It would be his alone to make. The day the Alliance fleet arrived, the void outside Arden Station burned with the light of hundreds of engines. Human warships and allied vessels moved into formation, their weapons ready. Cheers filled the corridors as soldiers believed the siege was finally over, but Elias felt no relief. He knew the arrival of the fleet meant that Zarina's time here was ending. One way or another, command wasted no time in issuing orders. Every ship was to focus fire on the Varith flagship. crippling their command structure in the first strike. Elias read the orders in silence, his jaw tight. He knew what ship they meant. He had seen it in every meeting with her. It was not just a target. It was her home, her command, and her life. The fleet opened fire, the space between the two sides filling with flashes of energy and burning debris. The Varith fought back with deadly precision, but the numbers were against them. Elias took his position in the command center, directing defensive fire where the enemy tried to break through. Yet his focus kept drifting to the tactical display that showed her ship holding steady in the chaos. Then the unthinkable happened. A sudden strike from one of the Alliance dreadnoughts punched through the Varith flagship's forward shields. The hull tore open, venting fire and debris into space. His chest tightened as he realized the bridge had been hit. Without waiting for clearance, Elias turned to his second-in-command. "You have the deck," he said, before running for the nearest launch bay. His shuttle cut through the battlefield, weaving between wreckage and weapons fire. The closer he came to the Varith flagship, the more damage he saw. Fires burned along its hull, and escape pods launched into the void. He forced the shuttle to dock with a damaged bay, locking the clamps before the systems could protest. The moment the ramp lowered, the air was thick with smoke and the sound of battle. Varith soldiers moved to block him, but he raised his hands. "I'm here for your commander," he shouted. They hesitated, their discipline breaking for just a moment. Then, through the haze, she appeared. Zarina's armor was scorched, one horn cracked, and a deep cut marked her cheek. Yet her posture was still strong. "You came," she said, her voice rough but steady. "I'm not leaving you here," he replied. Her eyes searched his face as if trying to decide whether to believe him. "If you take me, they will call you a traitor," she warned. He stepped closer. "Then they will," he said. She let out a slow breath, her eyes softening for the briefest moment. "I do not belong to your people," she said. "And I do not belong to mine," he answered. The sounds of approaching troops grew louder. The ship shuddered as another impact tore through its structure. She glanced toward the sound, then back at him. "If we go now, we may reach your station before they close the bay doors," she said. He nodded. Without another word, they moved together, cutting through corridors filled with smoke and the cries of the wounded. The Varith soldiers they passed watched in silence, not raising their weapons. When they reached the shuttle, she hesitated at the ramp. "Once I step inside, there's no return," she said. He met her gaze without flinching. "Then step inside," he said. She did, her tall frame moving past him as if the decision had already been made the moment he arrived. The engines roared to life, carrying them away from the burning flagship and into the chaos of the battlefield. The shuttle broke through the thick of the battle, weaving between friendly fire and enemy salvos. Elias kept the controls tight, knowing one mistake would end them both. Behind him, Zarina stood silently, one hand gripping the side rail as she watched her burning flagship shrink in the distance. Neither spoke until the station came into view, its shields glowing from repeated impacts. Ardent Station's docking control demanded identification, and the channel was filled with frantic voices questioning his return path. Elias ignored the orders to divert and push the shuttle into the bay with a controlled crash landing. Alarms blared as the ramp lowered. He moved first, but she followed close, her presence making every armed Marine in the bay freeze. The sight of the beast walking beside a human captain was something no one could have imagined. Security teams moved in fast, rifles trained on her. Elias stepped between them, his voice sharp. "Stand down," he ordered. Confusion spread through the soldiers, but the authority in his tone made them hesitate. Command's voice erupted over the comms, demanding an explanation. Elias answered with a single sentence. "She is under my protection." The silence that followed was heavier than any gunfire. They walked together through the corridors, soldiers parting before them. Zarina's gaze moved across every detail, reading the station as if it were a battlefield. "Your people look at me as if I am a weapon ready to strike," she said. "You have been one for most of your life," he replied. Her eyes turned to him. "And you do not see me that way." He shook his head. "I see you," he said. When they reached the command deck, the senior officers were waiting. Their faces were a mix of shock and anger. The admiral stepped forward. "You brought an enemy commander into our station," she said. Elias met her glare without looking away. "I brought someone who chose not to kill us when she could have," he replied. The admiral's expression hardened. "She is still our enemy," she said. "Not mine," Elias answered. The tension in the room was thick. The officers whispered among themselves, torn between protocol and the man who had kept the station standing through the siege. Zarina stood silent, her head high, her presence unshaken. She had walked into the heart of enemy territory without fear. Elias could see that every moment she remained here was a choice, not an accident. The comms officer reported that the Vareth fleet was retreating. Without their flagship, their formation had broken, and the Alliance fleet was pushing them back. Cheers erupted through the command deck, but Elias did not share in them. He looked at her, knowing the retreat meant she could never return to her people. "Your war is over," he said. She shook her head. "This war, perhaps. But I am still not free," she said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Then stay," he said. "Stay here with us." "With me." Her eyes searched his face for a long moment. "If I do, I will never again be Zarina of the Vareth," she said. "Then be Zarina," he replied. Just Zarina, for the first time. The steel in her gaze softened completely. She extended her hand, and he took it without hesitation. Around them, the command deck was filled with officers and soldiers who could not understand what they were seeing, but in that moment, it did not matter. The beast was gone, the woman remained. And for the first time, she was exactly what someone had once dared to call her: beautiful.